It all started on a blustery afternoon in July 1970, when tourists at Lockhart Gorge near Port Campbell National Park in Australia witnessed a bizarre sight that left them utterly speechless. A battered white 1956 Holden was found teetering at the edge of a cliff. Upon closer inspection, the tourists were horrified to find the bodies of a mother and her 3 young children inside the vehicle. The car was badly damaged, as if it had been involved in a head-on collision, and the windshield was shattered into a million pieces. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare, and the mystery surrounding it only deepened when it was revealed that the husband and father of the victims, Elmer Kyle Crawford, had vanished without a trace. The Crawford family murders were a brutal and senseless crime that left investigators and the public stunned. How could such a happy and loving family end up dead in a car at the bottom of a cliff? Who could have a motive to harm them? Welcome to Real Crime Storytime, where we bring you the stories of notorious cases from around the world. Today, we will be examining one of Australia's most shocking and disturbing cases, the Crawford family murders. But first, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please hit the subscribe and like buttons. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the mystery. The Crawford family was a happy and loving family living in Glenroy, Victoria, Australia. Therese Crawford, the mother of the family, was a kind and nurturing woman who had a passion for helping others. She was born in 1934 in the small town of Tallangatta, Victoria. She met her husband, Elmer Kyle Crawford, while working as a nurse at the Austin Hospital in Melbourne. They fell in love and were married in 1955. Elmer Kyle Crawford was born in May 1930 and grew up in rural Victoria. He was a hard-working man and a skilled mechanic who worked for many years as a truck driver. By 1970, the couple had 3 children together: Catherine, aged 13, James, aged 8, and Karen, aged 6. Catherine was a bright and ambitious girl who dreamed of becoming a nurse like her mother. She was a talented student and relished playing the piano. James, the middle child, was a friendly and outgoing boy who loved playing with his friends and exploring the outdoors. Karen, the youngest child, was a sweet and playful girl who was fond of animals and enjoyed spending time with her family. The Crawford family was a close-knit and happy family. They enjoyed going on family vacations and spending time at their holiday home in Port Campbell. However, their lives were tragically cut short on July 2, 1970, when their car was found at the bottom of a cliff at Lockhart Gorge, with the bodies of Therese and her 3 children inside. The crumpled and battered white Holden sedan teetered on the edge of the cliff, as if it had been flung there by some violent force. The windscreen, shattered and jagged, only added to the ominous atmosphere. As the rescuers peered inside the vehicle, a sense of unease washed over them. The missing back seat, replaced by a dark tarpaulin and blankets, hinted at something sinister. The blood, spattered on the dashboard and front seat, told a story of violence and horror. But it was the stench of death emanating from the car that sent chills down their spines. As they sifted through the jumbled mess in the car, they found a loaded .22 caliber rifle and family photos, mixed with other debris. The presence of a 15mm electrical cord with alligator clips was bizarre and inexplicable. The cliff rescuer tried to piece together what had happened, but the scene defied all logic and reason. Elmer Crawford, the husband of Therese Crawford and father of the children, was missing from the scene. The police were curious about where he might be when the electrocution device came into their notice, and the realization that Elmer was an electrician struck them. Police quickly realized that he wasn't another victim, but the prime suspect in the case. The shocking discovery of the Crawford family's car at the edge of the cliff at Lockhart Gorge was just the beginning of a mystery that has puzzled investigators and the public for over 5 decades. Despite numerous investigations and theories, the truth behind the brutal murders of Therese, Catherine, James, and Karen Crawford remains elusive, shrouded in darkness and uncertainty. As the autopsies were carried out on the victims, the severity of their injuries became clear. There were burn marks on Therese's ears, and at first it was unclear what could have caused them. However, it was later discovered that a special electrocution device had been constructed using a 15-meter length of electrical lead and alligator clips. The clips were attached to Therese's ears while she slept before electrocuting her with a shock of 240 volts, inflicting unimaginable pain and horror on her. Catherine and James, the 2 older children, had also suffered brutal injuries. They had both sustained fractured skulls from a savage beating with a sharp weapon before being electrocuted. The youngest child, Karen, had been bashed to death with a hammer, which was also found in the car. It was a heart-wrenching discovery that sent shivers down the spine of even the most hardened investigators. At 5:50 p.m. on 2nd of July 1970, Crawford was seen in the driveway of his home. Later, at 6:10 p.m., police traced the car's registration to the Glenroy address, and a Broadmeadows officer, John McCarty, was dispatched to Crawford's home. At 6:20 p.m., McCarty knocked on the door, but there was no answer. It's possible that Crawford was inside, quietly trying to clean the bloodstains from the floor. They returned around 10 p.m., and fearing for the family's safety, they forced entry into the house. What they discovered inside would haunt them for years to come. The inside of the Crawford family home was an eerie scene, with bloodstains smeared all over the walls and floors, and a trail of blood leading from the bedrooms into the kitchen. The sight of blood-soaked bedding was particularly gruesome, indicating that the crime had taken place in the bedrooms. The smell of death hung heavily in the air, making it difficult for investigators to stay in the house for long periods. Amidst the carnage, detectives discovered a still foaming bottle of carpet cleaning detergent, evidence that someone had tried to clean up the bloodstains. The scene was one of complete horror, and the violent nature of the crime left investigators puzzled as to who could have committed such a heinous act. As the investigation progressed, detectives stumbled upon a letter that was written by Therese. The letter contained intimate details of Therese's inner turmoil and deep distress about her 4th pregnancy, which conflicted with her strict Catholic beliefs. According to the letter, Therese had decided to keep the baby, despite her husband's wishes for her to have an abortion. The letter read, "I've been so upset, but what's the use of it? I'm 2.5 months now, so it looks like I've had it this time. We were going to come for Christmas, but won't be able to now, as I'll be due at the end of January." The letter was found by the investigators, along with a newspaper article about abortion written by the prominent Right to Life campaigner Margaret Tige. This discovery raised several questions in the minds of the investigators. Did Elmer bring this newspaper article to Therese and force her to carry out an abortion despite her strict Catholic beliefs? Was this what enraged Elmer and caused him to brutally murder his family? The homicide squad was called in, and arrangements were made to search the car at first light the next day. Cliff rescue volunteers George Cumming and Cecil Bergen were lowered down to the car, secured it to prevent it from slipping into the sea, and began their search. We lifted the tarpaulin, and Cec Bergen said, "I can see some feet." And, as the tarpaulin was lifted further, "I saw 3 sets of feet," Mr. Cumming said. When the tarpaulin was moved, a bedspread was folded back, and I saw 4 bodies wrapped in bedsheets. Homicide Squad Detective Adrian Donahue, who went on to become head of the Major Crime Squad, was at the top of the cliff that day. I made an examination of each of the bodies as they were brought up, he said. He was the first to realize the savagery of the crime that would go on to haunt several generations of Victorian police. It was later discovered that 2 weeks before the murder, the couple had prepared new wills, leaving Crawford a sizable estate, including $3,000 in cash, the Glenroy house, and blocks of land in Queensland if anything happened to Therese. Crawford had also been stealing from his employer and selling the goods, a fact that was uncovered by police during their investigation. On the night of the murder, Crawford removed the back seat of the Holden to create more space inside. After his wife and children went to bed, he brutally murdered them in their sleep, still dressed in their pajamas. He then wrapped their bodies in blankets and loaded them into the car, along with a motor scooter, fuel cans, a rifle, and a hose. In the winter darkness, Crawford drove for 200 kilometers to Lockhart Gorge, where he moved Therese's body into the driver's seat and connected the hose to the exhaust, feeding it through the window. He pushed the car off the cliff, hoping to make it look like a murder-suicide committed by Therese. But the car became stuck on the ledge instead of plunging into the icy Southern Ocean. Police have no idea how Crawford returned to Glenroy, but they suspect he may have hitchhiked or used the motor scooter he carried in the boot with the bodies. Sightseers first noticed the car perched precariously on the ledge at the blowhole at 1:30 p.m. on July 2nd. Later that day, Crawford was seen in the driveway of his home at 5:30 p.m. A police officer was sent to the Crawford home at 6:20 p.m. after a registration number check revealed the car was owned by Crawford. Crawford returned home on the scooter and began cleaning up the crime scene when police came knocking in the early evening. However, when he realized that the police were onto him, he changed his plans. He vanished into thin air and was gone when officers forced entry into the home several hours later. The scooter was left behind. There are several theories about why Crawford murdered his family. One theory is that he was angry with Therese's refusal to terminate the pregnancy. Another theory is that Therese discovered her husband was stealing from his workplace and she threatened to report him or demanded a divorce. If the couple split, Crawford would have had a lot to lose. The tragedy of the Crawford family is heart-wrenching, and it's hard to imagine the depths of despair and anguish that the family must have experienced in the moments leading up to their brutal murder. Crawford's callous and premeditated actions not only took the lives of his wife and children, but also destroyed the lives of their extended family and friends. The police investigation revealed the dark secrets and disturbing behavior of a man who was a loving father and husband, but who also had a dark and dangerous side. The mystery of Crawford's disappearance only adds to the tragic and haunting nature of this case. Elmer Crawford, a man of few words, had a reputation for being a hard worker and a reliable electrician at the Victoria Racing Club in Flemington Racecourse. Although he was viewed as a skilled and knowledgeable employee, he kept to himself and didn't socialize much with others. He was known to be serious and reserved in his interactions with his colleagues, often maintaining a stoic demeanor that left them guessing about his personal life. Despite his quiet demeanor, Crawford was respected by his colleagues for his expertise and dedication to his job. He was meticulous in his work and took his responsibilities seriously, earning him a reputation as a competent and reliable electrician. However, his colleagues were unaware of the dark secrets that lurked behind his reserved exterior, including his history of domestic violence. Reports indicated that Crawford's wife, Therese Crawford, had left him multiple times due to his violent behavior, but she always returned to him. The discovery of the bodies of Therese and their 3 children made Crawford the prime suspect in the investigation. However, he was nowhere to be found, and the police searched for him relentlessly. For years after the brutal murders of his family and his subsequent disappearance, Elmer Crawford was the subject of several possible sightings. However, none of them could be confirmed. The police continued to follow leads and investigate potential sightings, but they were never able to locate Crawford. In 1994, a woman claimed to have personally known Elmer and bumped into him in Bondi, Australia. She confronted him by addressing him with his name, but he denied knowing her and claimed to have been traveling from New Zealand. Another potential lead arose in 2005, when a body in a morgue in Texas was believed to be Crawford's. Facial recognition technology identified the man as a possible match for Crawford, and it was discovered that the man had removed his fingerprints to conceal his identity. The hope was that Crawford had been living in the US under an assumed identity. However, 5 years later, a blood relative of Crawford was discovered in New South Wales, and her DNA evidence proved that the man in the Texas morgue was not Crawford. Despite this setback, detectives from Victoria visited a remote and sparsely populated part of northwestern Australia in 2022 after a tip-off regarding a possible sighting. Unfortunately, the lead proved fruitless once again. The case of Elmer Crawford took an interesting turn when several people reported sightings of him in Western Australia. In response, 2 Victorian detectives recently travelled to the remote Pilbara region following another tip-off on Elmer's whereabouts, but unfortunately, they returned empty-handed. However, a former truck driver named Nugget Wright claims that he once stumbled across the killer. We started asking questions. It turns out he said he was from Melbourne, said Nugget. Anyway, I said, "Where is your missus?" He told me she was long gone. Said, "What year did you come up here?" And he said 1970. I asked, "Why did you leave Melbourne?" And he said, "I had to leave in a hurry. I did something terrible, and that's when the penny dropped." According to Nugget, the man's head dropped, his shoulders shrunk, and he had that attitude, "I've told this bloke too much." When Nugget mentioned the police's search for Elmer, the man's whole body language changed. However, the man claimed that he had never been interviewed by the police. Despite Nugget's account, the authorities have yet to confirm whether this sighting was legitimate or not. Despite numerous attempts by authorities to locate him, Elmer's whereabouts remain unknown. The authorities have gone so far as to offer a reward of $100,000 for any information leading to his arrest or conviction. The search for Elmer Crawford continues to this day, and the possibility of his capture remains a mystery. After the brutal murder of his wife and children, Elmer Crawford became a man on the run. Theories abound about where he went and what happened to him. One theory suggests that Crawford made his way to Western Australia, where he started a new life under a new name. Another theory is that he fled to New Zealand and lived there until his death. There have been reported sightings of Crawford over the years, including in Western Australia and in New Zealand. However, none of these sightings have been confirmed, and Crawford's whereabouts remain a mystery to this day. Some believe that Crawford may have taken his own life after committing the heinous crime. Others think he may have been killed by someone seeking revenge for the murder of his family. Despite the many theories about his whereabouts, Elmer Crawford has never been found. The case remains open, and authorities continue to search for any new leads that may finally bring closure to the tragic Crawford family murders. And that concludes our exploration of the Crawford family tragedy. Despite decades passing since the brutal events of that fateful night, the case remains unsolved, and Elmer Crawford's whereabouts remain a mystery. Was he able to escape and start a new life, or did he meet a more sinister fate? We may never know the answers to these questions, but what we do know is that the Crawford family and the tragedy that befell them will never be forgotten. Thank you for watching, and please share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more true crime content. And as always, stay safe.